Hey guys, today we're going to talk about heat illnesses. So the next thing we want to know is what is a heat illness? Heat illnesses occur from abnormal or prolonged amounts of heat and humidity without any relief or breaks. So that can come in forms of dehydration, overheating, core temperature. But all in all, there are three different forms of heat illnesses: heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. So first up, it's important to understand what dehydration is. Dehydration is when you lose more fluid than you put into your body. And when your body doesn't have enough water to help support the muscles, other bodily fluids have to compensate for the lack of fluid. So some symptoms of dehydration may include thirst, dark colored urine, fatigue, dizziness, and confusion. Typically, people who are outside working out or exercising are generally more dehydrated in humid environments because their sweat cannot evaporate off their bodies. So over to the right, I have an assess your hydration chart from the NCAA. So as you can read over here, numbers 1 through 3 are hydrated, 4, 5, 6 mildly to moderately dehydrated, and then 7 and 8, when it's the darker two colors, can be a serious problem that can possibly lead to exertional rhabdomyolysis, or also known as ER, which can also be a very serious or lead to a very serious problem. All right, so first up, we have heat cramps. Heat cramps are often present in the middle to end of practice when the athletes are typically really dehydrated. Some of the symptoms that go along with heat cramps include heavy sweating, dehydration. So the athlete's really thirsty. They're not used to the heat or humidity, so the environment that they're working out in. They didn't eat enough sodium, so they didn't intake enough sodium, and then they're not eating healthier meals. So they're eating a lot of bad sugary stuff that isn't going to help replace the fluids and sodium that they lost. Next up, we have heat exhaustion. Heat exhaustion is the inability to sustain adequate cardiac output resulting from extreme physical exercise and environmental heat stress. So here we go again, playing with the humidity and the environment, which plays a huge role in heat exhaustion. Signs with heat exhaustion include the lack of severe hyperthermia, possible CNS dysfunction. The athlete could show possible signs of nausea, headache, dizziness, and they could even show stomach cramps or whole body cramps. So in case an athlete does have heat exhaustion, it's important to remove them from the field to a cool shaded area. Next, you can remove their clothing, any excess clothing, and monitor their heart rate and respiratory rate. Generally in heat exhaustion situations, we want to get a rectal temperature to see what the core temperature is. While doing all that, we can monitor the athlete's central nervous system status. And then once we get their core temperature below 104, it's important that we get them to the nearest trauma center. All right. Next up, we have heat stroke. So heat stroke is characterized by CNS abnormalities, and which can cause damage to tissues because of the elevated or high body temperature rates. Signs and symptoms of heat stroke include CNS dysfunction yet again, nausea or vomiting, and combativeness. So it's important to understand and know those signs and symptoms, especially if the athlete is swinging at you, you might need assistance. Treatment for a heat stroke is very similar to the heat exhaustion. Try and get the athlete into a cold water tub as soon as possible to get their core temperature below 102. And then it's important to get them to the nearest medical facility afterwards. So right here, I have the steps during a heat stroke. So over here, we get the athlete into the cold tub immersion, monitor their vitals, obviously. Might even have to place an IV into them. And then once their body temperature gets below 102, we want to take them out of the tub because then we don't want to make sure that they don't go into hypothermia. And then after that, it's important that we get them to the hospital in case any possible organ damage has been done. And over here to the right, I have just some quick tips to prevent heat stress. As you can see, I also talk about those later. Right now, so how to prevent heat illnesses: drink plenty of water throughout the day, especially before and after exercise. That way you can replenish and be hydrated before and after practice. Dress in light clothes or light clothing. That way it's not as heavy. Coaches can schedule practices around the cooler parts of the day, so in the morning or at night. Increase the amount of time you spend outside. That plays a big key role for the athlete as they get used to the environmental stress around them. Make sure there's plenty of drink breaks, water breaks for the athletes every few hours or every few times within an hour. And then next, a healthy diet. Fruits and vegetables that are full of waters can help rehydrate the athlete and provide essential nutrients. And then finally, we have the WBGT. So this can be used in an event or prior to an event. So typically we're going to hold a device up towards the sun in the middle of the field. So at a football field, for example, we'll be right on the 50-yard line, right in the middle of the field. WBGT allows ATs to measure ambient temperature, humidity, solar radiation, and convection. So when the temperature is below 82 degrees, athletes can have normal activities. NATA recommends 3 separate rest breaks within an hour for at least a duration of 3 minutes. When the temperature gets between 82 and 87, just use discretion, watch their players as the temperature is getting higher. 87 to 89.9, maximum practice is only 2 hours. And for football, the players are only restricted to their helmet, shoulder pads during practice. And for all sports, they need to have at least 4 separate rest breaks within a single hour for at least 4 minutes. And then when the temperature gets between 90 and 92, the maximum practice time can only be for 1 hour. And football can have no equipment on, so just their jersey and shorts. And then finally, when it's over 92, they'll have to cancel practice. Now here are my references, and hope you enjoyed.